One thing that's really important if you're going to become a good cook is to ensure that you have the correct equipment and tools in your kitchen. Okay, whenever we talk about a kitchen tool or a piece of equipment, we're going to call that a kitchen essential. So the kitchen essentials segments of the channel are going to focus on a piece of equipment or tool that I think is pretty critical for you to have success in the kitchen. So we're going to kick off the channel with a kitchen essential, and that kitchen essential is your knives. Okay? Okay? Good knives are really, really important to successful cooking. Okay? We want to talk about how to recognize a good knife. What are the 3 essential knives that I think are important for every home cook to have in the kitchen? Also, how to care for your knives, how to store your knives, and how to hold a knife so that it is the safest for you. Okay, so the first thing I want to talk about is how to recognize a good knife. Okay, so hopefully I can get this in the frame. A good knife, first of all, is going to be made of stainless steel or carbon steel. Now, I am going to recommend stainless steel, and here is why. Stainless steel is strong, it's durable, and it's lighter weight. Carbon steel is even more durable than stainless, so no argument there. But the problem with carbon steel is that it is very, very susceptible to rust. If you're going to have this knife in your kitchen, it's going to be chopping up food. It's going to be getting cleaned regularly. You do not have the time to babysit your knife because a speck of water got left on it and now you've got rust on it. Carbon steel also keeps the sharp edge a little bit longer, but for a home cook, a stainless steel knife will keep a sharp edge for about, I'm going to say 6 months, 6 to 9 months maybe. I sharpen my knives about every 6 months, and I use them very, very frequently. So I am going to go on the record recommending stainless steel for your knives, okay? Another really important thing about your knives is that your knife should be one solid piece of metal, okay? You can see with my knife, this is the blade end, it is one piece of metal all the way through. Sometimes you will see in cheaper knives where you've got the metal that maybe comes to about here, and then there's a screw right here holding the handle onto the metal. After a while of chopping and moving this knife and it's hitting on the cutting board, that's going to get loose. Once that becomes loose, now your knife is moving differently than the way that you are trying to get it to move. The one thing you do not want with a knife is for it to have a mind of its own. And when it gets loose like that, it can have a mind of its own. So please make sure that your knife is one solid piece all the way through, okay? And then it should have a comfortable handle on it, okay? Most handles have a little, like curve here because that matches what the inside of your hand looks like when it's wrapped around a knife, okay? So stainless steel in one solid piece. Oh, one thing I do want to mention is always avoid an aluminum knife. An aluminum knife is not for the kitchen. If you are using an aluminum knife to, say, cut a sweet potato, I'll meet you at the ER because there's no way you're going to successfully get that really, really flimsy knife through a sweet potato without a maximum amount of effort, and that is when you end up hurting yourself, okay? All right, so the next thing I want to talk to you about is how to care for your knives, okay? Your really good knives should never, ever go into the dishwasher. Please hand wash your knives. The knife cannot withstand that really hot temperature and the chemicals that come out of the detergents for a dishwasher. It will dull the blade of your knife, and it'll probably end up ruining your handle and making it chip and crack, and then it won't be comfortable for you to use. So please do hand wash your knife. Once you have hand washed your knife and you put it in the dry rack, it needs to be face up. I know. Everybody wants to do it like this so that they don't cut themselves. Now, let me tell you, I'm probably one of the clumsiest people I know. Probably one of the clumsiest people that you know. Still, I put my knife in the dry rack up like this. If you are very afraid of cutting yourself because you still got dishes to do, you can do a couple of things. One, save your knife to last to clean it. That way you don't have to go back and forth between the dry rack and your dishes. Or as soon as you clean your knife, dry it off and put it away. Okay? If you're going to let it air dry in the rack, it has to be up. But if you don't like that, just dry it and put it away into your drawer or wherever you keep it. If it's a knife block, put it in there. Okay? Speaking of that, storing your knives. If you don't have a knife block, which is those, the wooden things with the little slits in it for each one of your knives, they just kind of store in there. I do not have a knife block because some of those knives that are in there, I don't use enough, and it just wasn't worth it for me to get a whole block of knives. I keep my knives in my kitchen drawer, and I've got one of those organizers or separators, so the knives have their own little section. You want to store your knife with the handle where you would normally reach. Okay, so it probably will lay in like this. If this is the inside of the drawer, the blade is up this way, the handle down toward where you would be reaching in. Okay, you don't want to be fishing around in there for your knives, so you want to keep everything away from it, so you're not going in there to get tongs or something and then all of a sudden you've cut yourself on your knife. Okay, so remember, no dishwasher. Dry it right away if you don't want to put it in the drying rack and risk cutting yourself, and then store it where you can get to it easily without hurting yourself. Okay, a couple other tips about your knife. Sharpening. I would say for most home cooks, anywhere from, say, maybe 6 to 9 months is good on sharpening your knife. There are some home sharpeners, those little things that you can do sharpening at home. I have one of those. If it gets to the point where I feel like I need to use it, that means it's time for me to take my knife to get sharpened. So I have 2 knives because when I take one knife to get sharpened, I have the other one at home to work with because I always leave it there. Sometimes they can sharpen in a day, but if they're busy, I don't want to worry about not having a knife for a couple of days while I wait for it to get sharpened. Okay, there are plenty of places that do knife sharpening. I usually take mine to maybe Williams-Sonoma because we don't have Sur La Table here in North Carolina, but there is Sur La Table in St. Louis and in some other places. Whatever is closest to you, take them there. Get your knife professionally sharpened every maybe 6 to 9 months. And your knife will last so much longer from a professional sharpening. There are those honing things. I don't mess around with that. I am not a professional chef. I have never learned how to use that properly, and I don't want to ruin my knife by trying to DIY it when it comes to sharpening. So I just take it and have it professionally sharpened. You will know when you'll be able to feel with your food also if it's not cutting as easily as it used to. But if you want to test the sharpness of your knife, you just want to take a piece of computer paper and your knife should be able to cut through it just like that. Okay? If you do that and your knife cannot cut through that paper, it is time to go and sharpen your knife. Okay? I want to share with you the 3 knives I think are essential for every home cook to have in their kitchen. You've got the serrated knife, or bread knife as it's often called. You have the utility knife, or chef's knife as it's more commonly known. And then the paring knife, the small one here. I want to start by talking about the utility knife. Okay, this is my go-to knife. You can probably tell that by the scratches on it. It's been well loved and it's been sharpened several times. A utility knife comes in different sizes. This one is a 7-inch utility knife. They come in 7-inch, maybe 7 to 8, depending on the brand. That is probably the most common size. It's the size that most home cooks will go for. They do come in 10-inch. A lot of professional chefs will get the 10-inch one, and that's because they can cover a lot more volume with one stroke because the knife is longer. And then there's a 5 to 6-inch knife. It's a little bit smaller. It's great if you have smaller hands, or maybe if you have children who are in the kitchen and cooking with you and they need a smaller knife to hold on to. Okay, then there is the bread or the serrated knife, which is great for bread and fruits with a skin on them, like tomatoes. Okay, the serrated edge will cut through that skin very quickly. On a knife like this, if you've got a tomato that's got that skin on the outside, it typically will press down and start to bruise that tomato before it actually makes a cut. Whereas this one with the serrated edge, all you have to do is rock it a little bit and it'll tear that skin, and then you can get a clean cut through. Okay, and this is a serrated edge knife. They're usually longer than your 7-inch chef's knife. I don't know the exact measurement of this one, but I would probably say about 9 or 10. And then there's the paring knife. This is just a small knife. It's good for peeling small fruits, things like that. Anytime you have, tiny things like some herbs, maybe even though I typically chop herbs with my utility knife, but this one it's easier to control because it's so much smaller. Okay, but still a very useful, very good knife to have in your kitchen. I believe that these three every cook should have. Now, if you are doing a lot of things like roasts and maybe carving of meats, then you might want to have a carving knife as well. I do not have one because I don't carve that often. The way you hold your knife when using it will make a difference in its performance. So I want to talk to you about the proper way to hold a knife when you're using it. First of all, you never want to have any of your fingers exposed to the blade. Now that sounds very, very obvious, and you're like, duh, Lisa, of course I don't. However, people will make the mistake of putting their finger here. Okay, this finger is going to slip. That balance gets thrown off. You would have to have balance like Simone Biles in order to keep this finger from moving your blade around. Anytime that blade is moving involuntarily, you're in danger. People will also have their thumb around here. Okay, this part of this knife is extremely sharp because this is a very sharp knife. You do not want to have any of your fingers or your other hand exposed to the blade at all. So the proper way to hold a knife is to place your thumb right here, wrap all 4 of your fingers around the other part of the knife. So you're basically making a fist around the knife, keeping every finger away from the blade side and no fingers up here, because that's just going to cause you an accident. Okay, you get more control with this grip and all of your fingers are out of the way. Now, when you have your food or whatever you're cutting up, you're going to use your non-dominant hand over here as your guide. You want to use this knuckle as your guide. You want to keep your fingers back, tucked back, and as you are cutting, it's okay if it lays on this knuckle. You just don't want to take it up too far. So because everything that goes up must come down, right? And you don't want it coming down and shaving off skin on your knuckle. So, and you don't have to touch the knuckle, but if the piece of food has gotten small and you need to, it's okay to do so. Okay? Just remember to keep all of your fingers wrapped around your knife like this. Couple other things about your knife. One, a sharp knife is a safe knife. That might sound counterintuitive, but it is the truth. When your knife is dull, you have to put more force into slicing into your food product. Okay, when you put that force in, that's when your hand slips, that's when mistakes happen. So when your knife is sharp, it is safer for you. When you are using your knife and you're cooking, okay, do not leave food residue on your knife for an extended period of time. Okay, if you know you are not about to wash the dishes right now, just take your towel and at least get the food residue off, because food residue on this part of your knife can start to dull your blade. And if it gets close to the really sharp edges, it can also start to erode if it's acidic, like tomatoes or any kind of citrus or anything like that. So how much should you expect to pay for a good knife? This one, I believe, and I've had it a long time, so I don't remember exactly, but I'm going to guess it was maybe $200. I may have gotten it on sale, for maybe 150, something like that. There are knives that cost in the thousands. I am absolutely not recommending that you go out and get $1,000 knife. Okay, you don't need that. Look at specialty food stores that specialize in good, quality knives. You should be able to go in there and ask them those questions that I just shared with you about the material. Is this one solid piece? Feel the handle. Make sure that handle feels comfortable in your hand. Make sure it feels balanced. Some of the knives, they get really fancy now, and they have these big old bulbs on the end, and that just feels off balance to me. I've had them in my hand, and it just makes it feel heavy toward the back, too heavy. Now, your knife, when you have it in your hand, you should feel the control right in here, so it should feel heavier. This part of the knife should feel heavier than this, but when they add a bunch of stuff here, it throws you off balance, and it makes your cutting a little bit off. So look to spend maybe $150 to $200 for a knife, unless you catch it on sale. They do offer great sales on knives periodically. So think around, cooking seasons like Thanksgiving and stuff like that. When they run those, Black Friday sales or whatever, you might want to invest in your knife if you don't already have a really good one that you love.